I have a theory that a lot of people don't actually lose their faith. I think it's just a matter of outgrowing the version of God that they were handed as children. I really think that's what it is. We've outgrown the idea of God as presented by these ridiculous religious texts that date back to a time when the authors had a 95% illiteracy rate in the public. People didn't know where the sun went at night when it set. They didn't know about germs. They didn't understand how the cosmos worked. They didn't know to wash their hands before preparing dinner for their families. Even after maybe taking a poop, they didn't know to wash their hands. And that's where we get all this information about gods that humans have worshipped. So think about this for a minute. Most of us were introduced to a God, perhaps the Abrahamic God, perhaps others, but a God who is basically a cosmic parent, always watching us, always judging us for sure, always keeping score, because that's what perfect beings do, right, is keep score. They're petty, ready to punish on a whim. And that version of God might work when you're 7 years old. No offense, when you're a little kid. But when you're an adult trying to navigate the real world that most of us live in, real life, real trauma, real questions that deserve real answers, that tiny, tiny, egomaniacal, rule-based God suddenly feels way too small for many of us. I have a theory that when people start deconstructing, they're not rejecting truth. I think when people deconstruct, we reject fear. We reject manipulation. We reject indoctrination. We're rejecting an identity that was forced onto us, chances are, before we ever had the ability to question it. Just like Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, the Easter Bunny, all this stuff, you ingrain that in a child when they're young and gullible and impressionable. You don't teach kids about Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy when they're 19 years old, when they're 25 years old, right? You got to do it when they're young, and they'll believe it. Here's the wild part. Almost everyone that I've talked to who leaves that old version of the God concept behind doesn't become worse. They become better people. They become kinder. They become more curious about the world. Religious people think they have all the answers, and those who aren't, well, we're so curious about finding out more tomorrow. We're more compassionate, I think. We're more open-minded for sure. It's almost like removing fear of godly punishment, of divine punishment, allows us to finally become who we were meant to be before religion told us who we were going to be and who we were going to worship and what we needed to do to go to the good place and what we needed to avoid to go to the bad place. So maybe the problem was never you falling away from faith. Maybe the problem was you were put into a box and you were told to stay inside of it. And you knew, the way I knew, that we were too big for that little goddamn box. So I have a theory. I have a theory that people don't walk away from God and faith. They walk away from the version of God that kept them from growing, from questioning, from evolving. Those are my thoughts anyway. Another long video. I think I'm becoming an expert on long videos here. I think those of us who have deconstructed are on to something much more honest, much more human, and ultimately, for sure, 100%, much more liberating.